for their contribution in terms of broadening what we hope was a general interest.
The document was ready. The appointment had been discussed, the responsibilities had been outlined, and Princess Anne believed the matter was all but settled. Sophie was about to become a trustee of one of the monarchy's most closely guarded royal estates. Then William intervened. With a single demand, he stopped the appointment before it could be finalized, insisting that not even Anne could make such a consequential decision without the formal approval of the royal council. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne had chosen Sophie for reasons impossible to dismiss. The Duchess of Edinburgh had spent years proving she could be trusted with duties and responsibilities that brought no applause. The trusteeship, a formal position overseeing the care, finances, access rules, and protection of royal property, would place her inside the circle guarding the monarchy's inheritance. Sophie would gain influence over archives, residences, ceremonial access, and decisions shaping how the estate passed into the next reign. William made his position unmistakable. He formally blocked Anne from confirming the appointment and ordered the unsigned instrument removed from the table. The instrument, the document making the decision effective, was returned to the private secretary before she could reach for it. Anne did not raise her voice. Her expression hardened as the prince explained that experience, loyalty, and good intentions could never replace constitutional procedure. The rebuke cut deeper than protocol. Anne had served the crown for decades. William's intervention felt like a judgment on that service. To the Princess Royal, he had not merely paused a nomination. He had challenged her right to recognize competence. Sophie received the news in an adjoining room. She remained composed, yet the silence before her answer exposed the humiliation beneath her restraint. She had never campaigned for the role. Still, knowing William had stopped it left her with a fear. Perhaps the future king did not trust her. The warning had not come from Anne. Hours earlier, a sealed briefing had reached William's office, claiming the appointment bypassed a council review required for property tied to the succession. He set his pen beside the document and spoke quietly. No appointment involving the next reign will be made through assumption. That sentence changed everything. Anne demanded to know who had sent the briefing, and why someone within the palace wanted William to act before Sophie could take the position. But before she could identify the hand behind the warning, the dispute exposed danger. Each of the three royals believed they were protecting the crown, yet none agreed on what protection required. This was not a battle between loyalty and betrayal. That would have been simpler. Anne, William, and Sophie had each built their royal lives around duty, discipline, and restraint. Yet the proposed appointment forced those virtues into direct collision. Anne saw a trusted woman ready to shoulder more responsibility. Sophie saw an opportunity to serve without spectacle. William saw a decision carrying consequences far beyond the present reign and a dangerous precedent he could not allow. Anne had never been impressed by titles alone. She judged people by endurance, competence, and whether they remained dependable after the attention disappeared. The Princess Royal, the traditional title held by the monarch's eldest daughter, had spent decades watching courtiers chase influence, while quieter figures carried the real burden. Sophie earned her respect because she worked without demanding status, praise, or a larger place in royal ceremonies. Sophie understood what the trusteeship could mean. It was not simply another duty added to her calendar. A royal estate trustee was a person formally trusted to help protect important property, financial arrangements, records, and long-term decisions. For her, the appointment would mark a shift from supportive family member to guardian of assets that could shape the monarchy's future. She did not see promotion. She saw responsibility. Anne entered Sophie's private sitting room without aides or secretaries. She closed the door and delivered the news herself. William had stopped the confirmation. The trusted confidant tightened her fingers around the arm of the chair, but her voice remained controlled. Did he object to the process? Sophie asked. Or to me? Anne could not answer. That uncertainty angered her more than William's intervention. She had expected disappointment, perhaps even outrage. Yet Sophie refused to condemn him. The Duchess insisted that the future king had to act according to his conscience. Then her voice faltered. Being discussed as a constitutional risk, she admitted, hurt more than losing the position. William carried a different fear. As heir, he had begun examining decisions that could bind his future reign. Informal appointments made through family confidence could later become permanent claims over royal property. The prince believed affection must never be allowed to create authority without limits. William read the trusteeship clause twice. It contained dormant emergency powers allowing trustees to act if the sovereign became temporarily unable to fulfill official duties. He circled the words, "temporary incapacity," closed the folder, and requested the council's historical appointment records. Those records changed the dispute again. They showed that Anne had considered expanding Sophie's authority before, and that one earlier royal ceremony had convinced her the palace could no longer leave the trusted confidant outside its inner circle. To understand why Anne moved so quickly, the story had to return to the moment that made hesitation feel more dangerous than defiance. The conflict did not begin with a legal document. It began months earlier, during a ceremony that should have displayed unity. While senior royals moved through carefully rehearsed duties, a sudden failure inside the estate administration threatened to disrupt the entire occasion. Sophie stepped forward when others hesitated. Anne watched her restore order without demanding recognition. By the end of that day, the Princess Royal had made a private decision. Sophie would no longer remain merely useful. She would be trusted. Pressure had already been building behind the estate's polished traditions. Several senior trustees were growing older, while too many duties remained concentrated in too few hands. A trustee was someone formally responsible for protecting property, finances, records, and long-term decisions. Anne feared the monarchy had failed to prepare dependable custodians for the next generation, leaving vital responsibilities exposed whenever one experienced official became unavailable. Sophie had quietly filled that gap. She assisted with charitable events, tenant meetings, preservation work, and private family gatherings. The trusted confidant possessed no formal authority, yet staff increasingly turned to her when discretion mattered and emotions threatened to overwhelm procedure. She listened before acting. More importantly, she never used another person's crisis to increase her own importance. The decisive moment came during the founder's commemoration at the estate's private chapel. The ceremony, created to honor those who had preserved the property across generations, was minutes from beginning when a senior trustee suddenly collapsed. Access instructions became confused. Confidential guest lists were left unsecured. Senior staff contradicted one another as the royal family prepared to enter. Sophie moved before panic could spread. She secured the abandoned papers, reorganized the procession, and comforted the trustee's frightened spouse. The Duchess then gave staff clear instructions, ensuring the ceremony continued without exposing the confusion beyond those present. Anne watched every decision. William witnessed enough to understand how close the occasion had come to failure. Anne found Sophie afterward in an empty passage, still holding the trustee's folder. "You carried responsibility that was never formally yours," she said. The trusted confidant answered simply that someone had to prevent panic. That response settled the matter in Anne's mind. Sophie had not seized authority. She had accepted its burden when everyone else froze. William reached the opposite conclusion. He admired Sophie's calm, but the prince was alarmed that the estate had depended on someone with no legal mandate. Anne saw proof that she deserved authority. He saw proof that the system had become dangerously informal. Anne privately instructed the estate secretary to prepare Sophie's appointment. When he warned that her discretionary power had not been used for decades, she placed Sophie's name atop the draft and declared delay more dangerous than precedent. A copy later reached William with a handwritten accusation. Anne intended to act before Charles could reconsider the trustee structure. That accusation turned confidence into a suspected power move, and when William confronted her, neither would hide behind polite royal language. The room had been cleared of aides, secretaries, and legal advisors. Only William and Anne remained. Separated by a table carrying the appointment papers, neither of them would sign. The prince arrived determined to defend procedure. The Princess Royal entered convinced that her judgment had been insulted. What followed was not a ceremonial disagreement. It was a collision between two generations of royal authority, and the first time Anne openly questioned whether William's preparation for kingship was becoming a hunger for control. William had requested the private meeting to stop the dispute from spreading through the household. Anne agreed, but rejected his suggestion that the palace solicitor attend. A palace solicitor was the lawyer responsible for advising the royal household on legal and constitutional matters. She wanted no interpreter between them. If William believed she had crossed a line, he would have to tell her himself. Anne pushed the disputed folder across the table. The trust deed, the legal document defining how the estate must be managed, gave senior trustees the power to fill an operational vacancy. She insisted that Sophie's appointment fell within that authority. William answered that the estate's connection to succession planning made full council approval essential. "You blocked a capable woman because you feared authority you did not personally grant," Anne said. William did not touch the folder. He replied that he had blocked a process designed to escape scrutiny, not the woman chosen through it. The prince respected Sophie, but respect could not turn an informal decision into a permanent right over property linked to the next reign. Anne's restraint broke. She accused him of humiliating Sophie to establish his dominance before becoming king. William's composure fractured in return. He insisted that preparing for the crown meant stopping decisions he might later be forced to inherit, even when the person making them was someone he respected. William opened the briefing and pointed to the Emergency Powers Clause. The provision allowed trustees to act when the sovereign became temporarily unable to perform official duties. He asked whether Anne had examined it fully. Anne's silence lasted only seconds. It was enough. She had reviewed the appointment mechanism, but not the full reach of that dormant power. Yet the Princess Royal had discovered something his briefing had minimized. Sophie could not activate the clause alone. A majority of trustees had to agree, and the sovereign's private secretary had to give written confirmation. Anne accused William's office of inflating the danger to justify intervention. William finally lifted the document. He removed Sophie's appointment page and placed it beside Anne. "The nomination may survive," he said. "The method will not." Anne closed the folder sharply. Before leaving, she warned that several council members had private interests in the estate. One of them might have manipulated William before Sophie could challenge those interests. William had defended the council as a safeguard, but Anne's warning forced him to ask whether it was protecting the crown or protecting itself. The Royal Council appeared to be the solution, a formal body capable of reviewing Anne's proposal without emotion or family pressure. Yet beneath its polished procedures lay rivalries, old loyalties, and private fears. Sophie's appointment would not merely add another name to a trustee register, it could shift the balance of influence over contracts, access, restoration projects, and future estate policy. William had demanded scrutiny. He soon discovered that some councillors feared scrutiny more than anyone. William understood why the council mattered. The Royal Council, a group of senior household officials, legal advisors, financial custodians, and continuity representatives, approved appointments affecting strategically important royal property. Its decisions could shape who controlled estates across different reigns. That authority was meant to protect the crown from personal favor, but power hidden behind procedure could become just as dangerous as favor itself. Sophie unsettled certain officials because she asked direct questions. During earlier estate visits, the trusted confidant had challenged unexplained spending, restricted access arrangements, and management agreements that had survived for years without serious examination. Anne valued that courage. Others feared what Sophie might uncover once she possessed the right to inspect records, rather than merely request answers. William's confidence began to weaken. He had believed he was correcting an irregular appointment, yet Anne's warning forced him to question the briefing that triggered his intervention. The emergency clause had been presented as though Sophie could seize authority during a crisis. The prince now suspected someone had isolated its most alarming language and buried its limits. Charles received the council file and read it alone. The king reached the account of the confrontation between his son and sister, removed his glasses, and placed the papers down. He trusted William's instinct to protect the next reign. He also trusted Anne's judgment of character. Now a dispute over governance had wounded both of them and pushed Sophie into the center of a struggle she had never requested. William ordered the original briefing, compared with the complete trust deed. The review confirmed his fear. Sophie could participate in emergency decisions, but she could neither begin nor enforce them alone. Key restrictions had been omitted. Financial records exposed an even darker motive. One council member had repeatedly supported outside management contracts Sophie had questioned during estate visits. Her appointment could reveal whether those agreements served the property or those benefiting from them. William summoned the official who circulated the briefing. The man lowered his eyes and claimed he had made the risks immediately understandable. "Selective clarity is another form of deception," William answered. The prince now knew he had been manipulated. Yet reversing his block immediately would make him appear weak and prove Anne's accusation that he had acted before understanding the evidence. Worse, Sophie had already made a painful decision. The struggle was no longer simply between William and Anne, because the woman everyone claimed to be protecting was about to remove herself from the contest entirely. Sophie had remained silent while her name was debated in council papers, private meetings, and increasingly tense conversations. She had watched Anne defend her, and William question the process surrounding her appointment. Then she reached her limit. In a handwritten letter, she withdrew her name from consideration. There was no accusation, and no display of anger. That restraint made the message more devastating. By stepping away, Sophie forced the family to confront the human cost of their struggle for control. Sophie explained that a trustee needed the confidence of every branch of the royal household before taking responsibility. The role required someone to protect property, finances, records, and long-term estate decisions without becoming a source of division. Her nomination had now split the very family she would be expected to serve. Accepting under those conditions, she wrote, would weaken the institution rather than strengthen it. The withdrawal settled nothing. The royal council still had to decide whether Anne possessed the authority to make the appointment and whether William had been entitled to suspend it before a formal vote. The legal argument remained alive even after Sophie removed herself from its center. Anne read the letter alone at her desk. The Princess Royal reached the sentence, stating that Sophie would not stand between aunt and nephew, removed her glasses, and pressed the paper flat with both hands. Her anger toward William began to collapse beneath guilt. She had nominated Sophie to reward years of service, yet the trusted confidant was now suffering, because Anne had acted without first securing undeniable support. William received his copy minutes later. The prince had expected Sophie to defend herself, request a hearing, or challenge the claims made against her. Instead, she refused to fight for a role that might damage the crown. That restraint struck him harder than any accusation. His intervention may have protected procedure, but it also allowed a loyal woman to be treated as a danger before anyone had asked her to speak. Sophie's letter carried one unexpected condition. She would reconsider only if the entire appointment system was reviewed. The council's conflicts were disclosed, and Anne's nomination was judged openly rather than through selective private briefings. She was not asking for favor. She was demanding fairness. Charles refused to accept the withdrawal as final until Sophie spoke to him personally. The king understood what was at stake. Procedure might survive this crisis, but trust between his son, his sister, and the woman caught between them might not. Sophie later received a note confirming that her decision had circulated through the household. She folded it carefully, continued speaking to guests, and waited until she was alone before her strength finally gave way. That evening, William went to see her without secretaries, legal files, or Anne's knowledge. He did not arrive to defend himself. He arrived to admit what he had done wrong. Away from the machinery of royal power, William and Sophie would finally speak as family, and one honest admission would alter everything. There were no briefing folders on the table, and no advisors waiting outside the door. William sat opposite Sophie with nothing to hide behind except the decision he had already made. She did not ask him to reverse it. She did not accuse him of distrusting her. Instead, Sophie asked whether he had read the complete document before stopping the appointment. When William admitted that he had not, the conflict shifted. For the first time, authority gave way to personal accountability. William did not abandon the principle behind his intervention. He still believed Anne should have sought formal council approval before granting lasting influence over property tied to the next reign. Succession-sensitive property meant royal land and assets whose control could affect the monarchy after the crown passed to a new sovereign. No individual royal, he argued, should be able to shape that future through family confidence alone. Sophie surprised him by agreeing. The trusted confidant said she would never accept a role whose legitimacy depended on an outdated clause or the personal trust of one relative. She wanted the authority to serve, but she also wanted every responsibility clearly defined and every limit openly recorded. William lowered his voice. He apologized for allowing an incomplete briefing to shape his treatment of her nomination. The prince admitted that his urgency to protect the future reign had made him react to the possibility of danger before understanding the person trapped inside the decision. He had defended procedure, but in doing so, he had allowed suspicion to speak louder than fairness. Sophie refused to make his apology easy. Being blocked, she explained, was not the deepest wound. The greater pain came from learning that officials had debated her loyalty without once asking what kind of trustee she intended to become. She had been reduced to a risk before anyone allowed her to explain her purpose. Then Sophie disclosed her plan through the private conversation itself. Her first act would have been to request an independent audit, an outside examination of estate contracts, spending, and possible conflicts of interest. The revelation confirmed William's darkest suspicion. Certain council members had feared not her emergency powers, but the questions she intended to ask. William asked whether she would accept the position if the process were rebuilt. Sophie said yes, but only if Anne and William presented her name together. The appointment could not belong to the old guard or the future king. It had to represent shared trust. William extended his hand. Sophie did not take it. "Will you reform the council even if my nomination fails?" she asked. The prince promised he would. Only then did she place her hand in his. William now had to face Anne, admit he had been misled, and ask the woman whose authority he challenged to stand beside him. The apology repaired his bond with Sophie, but reconciliation would remain incomplete until he acknowledged the difference between defending procedure and using it without wisdom. The palace had hoped to contain the dispute behind closed doors. That hope ended when the story reached the morning press. Suddenly, William's intervention, Anne's anger, and Sophie's withdrawal were no longer private family wounds. They became a national argument about royal power. Some saw a future king enforcing accountability. Others saw a trusted duchess humiliated by palace politics. Yet one striking public moment transformed the debate from gossip into a serious question about how the monarchy should govern itself. William's supporters praised his refusal to let personal trust replace oversight. Royal oversight meant the formal checks used to prevent one individual from controlling appointments, property, or institutional power without review. Anne's defenders answered with equal force. They argued that experienced working royals understood service better than officials who viewed every decision through files, clauses, and risk assessments. Sophie attracted the deepest sympathy. The trusted confidant had not attacked William, blamed Anne, or defended herself through palace briefings. Her withdrawal letter appeared to many as an act of sacrifice. By stepping away from authority rather than fighting for it, she strengthened the belief that she possessed exactly the restraint the trusteeship demanded. Anne watched a television panel describe her as reckless. One commentator suggested that the Princess Royal had tried to seize control of the estate through an outdated power. She switched off the screen before the discussion ended. Decades of disciplined service had been reduced to one accusation, and her fury deepened because the public still did not know how selectively William had been briefed. William faced a harsher judgment elsewhere. Another broadcast called Sophie collateral damage in his preparation for kingship. The prince did not ask the communications office to challenge the claim. He knew the palace could not demand public trust while hiding that incomplete information had influenced his intervention. Then one moment captured the national mood. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered beside newspaper stands carrying the same front page. A photograph showed William and Anne walking in opposite directions beneath the headline, "Who Guards the Guardians?" One woman raised a handwritten sign above the crowd, "Let Sophie be heard." By evening, that image appeared across every major broadcast. The pressure forced action. The palace confirmed that the Royal Council would conduct a full governance review, meaning a formal examination of its appointment rules, financial conflicts, and internal conduct. Sophie's withdrawal had achieved what argument alone could not. It had forced the institution to examine itself. William and Anne entered the council meeting together. Neither spoke first. The future king placed the corrected briefing beside the original. The Princess Royal laid Sophie's nomination across them both. Headlines could no longer decide the outcome. William and Anne now had to choose between preserving their pride and restoring Sophie through a process neither side could control alone. With the nation watching and the full truth finally exposed, the family faced one last decision: defend individual authority, or rebuild the trusteeship around shared responsibility. The final council meeting did not begin with victory. It began with admission. William acknowledged that he had been right to demand approval, but wrong to act upon a distorted briefing. Anne accepted that confidence in Sophie could not substitute for a transparent appointment. Sophie entered the room only after both had spoken. By then, the dispute had stopped being a contest over who possessed the stronger authority. It had become a test of whether the monarchy could correct itself without destroying those who served it. The governance review delivered a difficult verdict. Anne's discretionary appointment power existed, but its wording was outdated and dangerously broad for a trusteeship connected to succession-sensitive assets. Those were properties and financial interests capable of affecting the monarchy after the crown passed to a new sovereign. William's suspension was therefore upheld as necessary, but the council refused to treat his actions as beyond criticism. The review condemned the selective briefing sent to William. The official responsible was removed from estate decision-making, while members with financial conflicts were ordered to disclose them and withdraw from related votes. The council had demanded accountability from Anne. Now it was being forced to accept the same standard. William turned directly toward Anne. He told her that her judgment of Sophie had been sound, even though the route she chose was not. The prince did not soften the truth, but neither did he hide from his own failure. Anne answered with equal honesty. William's instinct to protect the future had been sound, she said, but he had allowed suspicion to outrun fairness. The Princess Royal had not surrendered her position. She had transformed it into something stronger, authority willing to withstand examination. William and Anne then presented Sophie's name together. The trusted confidant accepted only after receiving written confirmation that future appointments would require independent review, transparent powers, and clearly defined limits. She wanted no favor hidden beneath family affection. Sophie read every page of the revised appointment before signing. Anne stood beside her while William waited across the table. When she finally set down the pen, the future king extended his hand. The Princess Royal placed hers over both of theirs. Sophie's first approved action was the independent audit she had planned from the beginning. That decision exposed why compromised officials had feared her, and why Anne had trusted her. William emerged neither defeated nor triumphant. He proved that a future monarch must be strong enough to stop unchecked authority and humble enough to admit when he has been misled. Anne preserved her dignity by accepting scrutiny. Sophie gained the position without becoming the beneficiary of favoritism. What began as a blocked appointment ended as a declaration. The monarchy's future would belong neither to private influence nor inherited certainty, but to those willing to submit even royal power to responsibility. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.